All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on the Paraeducator Certificate Program, where we're going to be providing an update for implementation leaders. That's our primary audience for today, but anyone's welcome, but provide an update on the program, some things to know about the things to do for the school year, and also just considerations to be making for the following year. My name is Jack Busby. I'm the Associate Director of Educator Pathways and the Paraeducator Board with the Professional Educator Standards Board. Our agency has two boards within it, one being PESB and one the Paraeducator Board. Joining me today are my colleagues, Alicia Erzim and Tanya Bartlett. Tanya, do you mind unmuting and introducing yourself? And then Alicia, please.
Sure. So I'm Tanya Bartlett, and I'm actually in the professional certification office at the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, and I'm happy to be here to answer questions today.
Thanks, Tanya.
And I'm Alicia Erzim. I'm the program assistant for the Educator Pathways and Paraeducator Board. Happy to be helping out today.
Thank you, Alicia. Wanted to let everybody know we are recording this webinar. That way we provide an opportunity for anyone who's not able to join us to be able to watch this later on. You also have the opportunity to access these slides by going to the link that you see at the bottom, bit.ly/para-update. Please note that it is caps sensitive. So that is a capitalized P and a capitalized U. Just in case you're not able to write this down very quickly, that link will appear a few more times in this presentation if you would like to check it out. Before we would begin, we would like to acknowledge that no matter where each of us are physically, we are on the traditional land of Native Americans, whose ancestors were the original inhabitants. As we proceed, let's make sure that our actions benefit their descendants equitably. I'd also like to say that I am coming to you from Tacoma, which are the traditional lands of the Puyallup people. We would also like to acknowledge the history of this nation, one fraught with contradictions. For too long, this country has elevated a story of democracy and freedom while minimizing the impact of violence and oppression on marginalized communities on whose backs this nation was built. Today, members of our communities of color continue to experience racism through police brutality, mass incarceration, inequitable education and health services, deportation, and other forms of subjugation. We aim to disrupt the legacy of systemic racism by centering racial equity and justice in our work. This is how we stand with our communities of color. Before we begin, we want to offer a moment of silence to consider these words and how you might join us in this work. Thank you. All right, for today's webinar, we've broken it out into 4 different sections. First, an overview of the training requirements for the Paraeducator Certificate Program. We're doing this because we know that there have been, every year, there are changes when it comes to those who are required to provide the training. And we want to make sure everybody is fully aware of what the responsibilities are when it comes to providing the Paraeducator Certificate Program to paraeducators, in addition to when some of the deadlines need to be met. We will then do an overview of ESERT. It's the way that the educators in the state are able to track the professional development hours completed. We will then provide several different updates regarding the program that would be good for you to be aware of, and then have an opportunity to answer questions. For that last one, we will wait till the very end to answer questions. We do want to provide as much time as possible for Q&A. If you think of a question along the way, please use the Q&A chat function. That might be confusing. Please use the Q&A function through Zoom to ask your question. The chat function is disabled, so the Q&A will be the best way to ask your question. At the very end, Alicia will then unmute, ask the question, and either I or Tanya, depending if it's a certification question, will answer. So thank you. All right, training requirements. And for those who logged in a little bit later, you can access the slides at bit.ly/para-update. Again, this is cap sensitive, so capitalize the P and the U. All right, so very fundamentally, what is the Paraeducator Certificate Program? The ParaCert program is statewide funded training for paraeducators. All paraeducators are required to receive training on the Paraeducator Certificate Program if funded by the legislature. And the legislature has decided to fund the CERT program, and thus all districts are required to provide the training to their paraeducators. The goal of the Paraeducator Certificate Program is not only to provide professional development, but really an opportunity to further professionalize the career of a paraeducator, and also to provide an opportunity of a career ladder, so that if a paraeducator determines that they want to move from paraeducator to teacher, then there is a professional development career ladder approach through the fundamental course study, the general paraeducator certificate, and then the advanced paraeducator certificate to meet that end. So there's really a two-pronged approach here. In breaking it down, the first training that all paraeducators must receive from the district is the fundamental course of study. The fundamental course study, or the FCS, is 4 days of training or 28 hours of training on the Paraeducator Standards of practice. The goal with this training is for it to be foundational training that all paraeducators should have either before they start working with students or shortly after they're hired. That's the goal. There's the fundamental course study has an online, there's a curriculum for the fundamental course study with specific learning objectives that must be met. So this isn't just 28 hours of random training. There are units and learning objectives within those units that must be met in order to meet the requirements of the fundamental course study. The next required component is the general paraeducator certificate. The general certificate is 10 days of training or 70 hours of training on anything that can assist the instructional practice of a paraeducator. An important note, the fundamental course study is not a part of the general paraeducator certificate. These are two separate components. So first, a paraeducator completes the fundamental, which is 28 hours, and then they complete the next part, which is 70 hours towards the general. In total, the state is requiring paraeducators to receive 98 hours of training for the Paraeducator Certificate Program. Now, whereas the fundamental has a very specific course and learning objectives that must be met, the general paraeducator certificate is broad. So anything that can assist the instructional practice of a paraeducator will apply. It is also the responsibility of the district to provide this training to their paraeducators. Now, the two other certificates that you see on the screen, the subject matter and the advanced, these are optional. A paraeducator is not required to meet this training, and a district is not required to provide this training. The subject matter certificates, there's actually two of them. There's the ELL subject matter certificate, and then there's the special education subject matter certificate. These certificates exist because they require, there's more subject matter expertise and training that can be provided to a paraeducator. And these are also where paraeducators are most likely assisting their students who require the most need. These certificates are 20 hours of training each. Just like the fundamental course study, there's standards of practice, there's a course with learning objectives that must be met in order for the paraeducator to receive the certificate. There are also online courses to help a paraeducator meet these subject matter certificates. The last certificate that you see there is the advanced paraeducator certificate. It is 75 hours of training, and it can only be started after a paraeducator has completed the fundamental course study and the general paraeducator certificate. There are 3 specific areas of study for the advanced paraeducator certificate. And the goal here with the advanced is to really be able to provide an opportunity for paraeducators to further professionalize the career, and also an opportunity to consider the teaching role if they would like. Now, this was just a broad overview of the program, but if you go online or click on or go to the slides, you'll be able to see a link where we have a much more in-depth discussion online of the Paraeducator program. So what are districts required to provide this school year and next school year? Now, the last legislative session in 2021 funded 2 days of training on the Paraeducator certificate program. Now, for y'all who may have been here from the beginning of this training being provided, a great distinction that's happening now is that the legislature has funded the entire program. So before, it was just for the fundamental course study, and that was the only thing that districts were required to provide training on. But beginning this school year, 21-22, districts are required to provide training on both the fundamental course study and the general paraeducator certificate to their paraeducators. There is funding as well for the next school year, and we look forward to working with y'all to be able to provide that training to paraeducators. So beginning this school year, as I said, must train paraeducators on both fundamental and the general. Now, a question that might get asked is, well, what training do we need to provide to the paraeducators? And we've come up with a little graph to try to help share that information with you. If you have a brand new paraeducator that you've just hired, they've never been a paraeducator before, they're not coming from another district where they've received training. If you have just hired a brand new paraeducator, then you are required to provide 2 days of training on the FCS. Those 2 days is up to you as a district to decide and determine what those 2 days of training are going to be. If you've already, let's say you have a paraeducator who last year received training and now they're coming back again for a second year, then you're required to provide training on the next 2 days or the second 2 days in order to complete the fundamental course study. This will then total 28 hours of training. Now, for the majority of districts, you've probably already completed the fundamental course study for the majority of your paraeducators. This is what we've been working on over the last 2 years, and this third year was the first time that the general was open. This means that for all the paraeducators to have the fundamental course study complete, 14 hours of training must be going towards the general paraeducator certificate. Because of the way that this structure has come into existence, it does mean that you could have 3 different cohorts of training that's taking place. You have paraeducators who are brand new that needed the first 14 hours, paraeducators who have already been working for a year and are coming in for the second who need the other 14, and then paraeducators who are working on the general certificate. Because of this, it's very important to make sure that your district has a very robust tracking system for how the training is being provided to your paraeducators and who has completed what. Now, there are specific deadlines that the state legislature has put in place for when the fundamental course study must be met by paraeducators as provided by the district. These same deadlines still apply as they were established the previous year. So if a paraeducator is hired in your district for the first time before September 1st, then they must be trained on the they must be receive 2 days of training on the fundamental course study by September 30th. So if you hire a paraeducator on August 25th, then by September 30th, they must receive the 2 days of training that they're required to receive. If you hire a paraeducator after September 1st, then there's a distinction that's made. Small districts must train the paraeducator by September 1st of the following year. And large districts, which is here defined as 10,000 or more students, must train the paraeducator within 4 months of hire. So an example, if you hire a paraeducator and you're a small district on September 2nd, you actually have, and let's say it's 2021, you actually have until September 1st of 2022 to provide the 2 days of training to them. If you hire them, again, small district, on January 1st of 2022, You have until September 1st of 2022 to be able to provide the training to them. If you're a large district, it doesn't matter when you hire them after September 1st, you have to train them within 4 months of hire. And again, this is for the 2 days of training because 2 days is what was funded by the legislature. Now, because of COVID-19, over the last couple of years, the Paraeducator Board has established emergency rules that allow for online synchronous learning to meet the 1-day in-person requirement for the fundamental course study. For those who may not be familiar with this rule, the fundamental course of study there are 4 days, and one of the days must be met by in-person training. So face-to-face in the classroom, instructor and paraeducators. However, because of the pandemic, this is actually very challenging to do. So emergency rules have been established to allow districts and any provider that a district may be partnering with to meet the in-person requirement through online synchronous learning. Online synchronous learning is where you have an instructor available to not only provide instruction to paraeducators, but answer any questions. So we're not talking about watching videos online. We're not talking about the online course, Paraeducators, What We Do Matters. Those are all asynchronous. So there must be interaction with an instructor. Please note that this deadline does expire on September 1st, 2022. So after September 1st of 2022, the fundamental course study in-person requirement must be met by being in the classroom with a paraeducator and providing instruction to them. Now, I wanted to make sure to provide that information to you about what the current requirements are, but I also want to share with you that there's currently a House Bill 1942 that's being under consideration by the legislature that would change those dates. And the way that it would change it would basically say that school districts must provide the first day of the fundamental course study to paraeducators within 30 days of the date of hire, and the remainder of the fundamental course study within 6 months of the date of hire. So if we use an example of a paraeducator that's hired on September 1st, the first day must be provided within 30 days, and the second day must be provided within 6 months. This applies to all districts. And the deadlines that we talked about previously of if they're hired on September 1st, before or after, that all goes away. It's just this rolling 30 days. The next part is that the bill states that the fundamental course study must be provided in person, except that up to 2 days of the fundamental course study may be provided as synchronous online instruction. So that's the current bill that's being considered at the moment. And if it does pass the legislature by the end of this session, we will make sure to update all the districts, because that will change the way that some of the requirements are being met. And it would be important to notify you right away. More information on the bill can be found by clicking on the link once you access the presentation. All right. Some frequently asked questions that we receive from for the General Paraeducator Certificate follow. Does the General Certificate have a curriculum similar to the Fundamental Course Study? No, it does not. The General Certificate, again, is basically defined as anything that will assist the instructional practice for a paraeducator can meet the General Certificate. Training must be provided by a clock hour provider, and the training must be approved for clock hours as well. If it meets that, then the training will work towards meeting the requirements of the for the General Paraeducator Certificate. Do we have suggested training topics for the current school year? We do. During our listening sessions that we conducted last year, paraeducators were letting us know that they really want to receive more training on social emotional learning, on how to access technology, and also more opportunities to be able to learn with their teacher. So joint learning, it was a primary request from paraeducators. Who must provide training on the General Certificate? Just like the Fundamental Course Study, it is the responsibility of the district to provide training on the General Certificate. However, a district is welcome to partner with a provider in order to be able to meet the requirements. Some examples include community colleges, unions, neighboring districts, ESDs, and more. Does the general certificate expire? It does not. As soon as a paraeducator attains the general certificate, which they must do through the ECert, then the certificate that certificate is with them for the rest of their career. Is there an in-person requirement to the general certificate, similar to the fundamental course study? There is not. There is no in-person requirement to the general certificate. All right. So we're gonna now pivot a little bit to ECert. And ECert, as I mentioned earlier, is how educators are able to notify the state of the different clock hour completion that they are doing. It's also for the educator a mechanism for tracking. Paraeducators in this case will need to submit clock hour documentation online for completion of the fundamental course study, the subject matter certificates, and then also for the clock hours that are completed towards the general and the advanced certificate. If you're not sure, or if your paraeducators are not sure, and if the district you're not sure how to use ECert, then the certification office provides fantastic training on how to navigate the system of both creating an account, logging in, and more. And if you have questions on that, then Tanya can provide clarification at the very end of this presentation. But here are some of the items that they do provide training on. Basically, what is the paraeducator certificate requirement? How to create an account through demonstration, how to log professional development, the different paraeducator applications, an overview of clock hours. What are they? How do they work? And then also an opportunity just to be able to answer any questions. So I highly recommend reaching out to the certification office if you have any questions when it comes to using ECert, or if you would like more professional development on navigating the system. And note that this is not just for paraeducators, this is for any educator. All right. Again, you can access the slides if anyone joined in late through that link there. Remember, it is case sensitive. And now we're going to provide several different updates before we get to the Q&A section at the very end. So first, I thought it'd be interesting to be able to show you a little bit of data of where we're at right now. So in 2020, by September 1st, we had 5,529 paraeducators who completed the fundamental course study. In 2021, by September 1st, we had 16,500 and change who completed the fundamental course study. So this data that I'm talking about right here with you is what you as districts notified us through the iGrants 918 of how many paraeducators completed the different components. And you also let us know that 450 completed the general paraeducator certificate. This is fantastic to see. And within that data, you also shared with us that in total with the state, we're looking at 25,000 paraeducators that are going to have the fundamental course study complete by the end of this school year. So thank you so much for providing the data that you are providing, because it really helps in understanding how this program is rolling out. And also as we interact with the legislature in receiving continuing funding for this program. Now, on the right-hand side, you're going to see ECert data as of December 20th. So this is data from paraeducators going online and notifying completion of either the fundamental course study or the general paraeducator certificate. You'll notice that as of December 20th, 8,737 paraeducators noted completion of the fundamental course study, and 403 noted completion of the general certificate. I bring this up because it is important to make sure that you work with your paraeducators to help them navigate ECert and notify the certification office of the completion of the fundamental course study. You'll see that there's quite a bit of a difference, almost half, from the 16,500 who completed it by the counts of the district, and then the 8,700 who notified certification office via ECert that they had completed the fundamental course study. So just really want to highly emphasize the need here of districts urging your paraeducators to complete this notification, and also helping them and assisting them through that process, because it's brand new for paraeducators now that we're bringing them in, and there are several steps. So any assistance is greatly appreciated, and we thank you for that. Another update, the Professional Educator Standards Board and also the Paraeducator Board in subsequent months are reviewing CCRI Standards. Now, what you see on the screen is currently draft, and there's also a link in the notes section of these slides where you can review a lot more information on each of these different components. It is being brought up here because the CCRI standards, once they are adopted, these new ones, they will most likely have an impact on the paraeducator standards of practice and then all the subsequent training. Because if the paraeducator standards of practice have an amendment to them, either through addition or change in language, we're going to need to make sure that that is addressed in the curriculum of the fundamental course study, the online training, and anything else that's connected to this program. If there are changes, we will make sure to notify the field as soon as possible. And we will also make sure to update all the material we have as soon as possible. What's really important to note here is that if a district is providing their own training, either on the fundamental course study or the general certificate, and they may be using the curriculum that we shared with everybody, which is great, you will have to make sure that you update that material. If you're working with a provider, you'll have to make sure actually that the provider is providing the most up-to-date training to meet the standards and learning objectives of the fundamental course study. Now, we anticipate that once the Paraeducator Board has an opportunity to review all this, the changes will come into play as early as school year 22-23. So please do keep up to date on this. One of the best ways to do that is through our Paraeducator newsletter that we update every couple months. So I do highly recommend signing up for that newsletter. So we're also excited to share that the legislature requested the Professional Educator Standards Board and Paraeducator Board to develop an online course to prepare educators on effective student, family, and community engagement. We are using the OSPI developed Family Engagement Framework as a foundation for this training. We anticipate that this training will be available for all educators to have access to beginning during the 22-23 school year. We're really excited for this. We're working with a contractor in order to be able to develop it. It will be an online course, but the way that we're building it out is that there will be a facilitator guide so that any district will have an opportunity to be able to provide the training in person and really work with their community and family to provide the best training for your educators. So we're looking for a very engaging practice here, and we're looking forward to it rolling out. We also want to note that next month, and we're currently trying to narrow down the date, we're going to have another listening session for paraeducators. If there are paraeducators on here, we highly recommend checking it out. If there are district leaders here, highly recommend pushing out the announcement to your paraeducators. This is a fantastic opportunity to be able to interact with the paraeducator board members and share your experiences both on the training, but also the impacts that COVID-19 has had on your role. And if there's anything that you would like the paraeducator board members to know. And unlike how we're doing a webinar here where it's me and my colleagues sharing information to you and then answering some questions, the listening session is the other way around. It's paraeducators having more of a conversation with board members. We've had great feedback from the last few times that we've done this, and we're looking forward to having another one next month. And then I think the final update that we have here is a reminder for all district leaders who are implementing the program that in spring of 2022, you will be required to complete a survey regarding the training of the Paraeducator Certificate Program. This is a requirement that's listed under the assurances of I-Grants 918 and that you all agreed to. And questions that are going to be covered are regarding like how you're scheduling the training, what topics are you providing, especially for the general certificate, what challenges are you experiencing, what learnings have you had, and much, much more. This information will help us be able to provide better recommendations to the legislature, but also then to gather it and provide information to district leaders who may be struggling on item A, and maybe district B is doing a really good job, and we can provide that information to you. So this survey is very important for district leaders to complete, and we look forward to sharing the information with you once it's gathered. And it should be coming out in the next month or two. All right. And with that, for the next, looks like 29 minutes or so, we're going to open it up for Q&A. If you have questions, please do put them in the Q&A function for Zoom. If we don't get to your question today, or if you think of a question later on, the best way to communicate with us is through our email at paraboard@k12.wa.us, and we will make sure to respond to you as soon as possible. We also want to notify you, just in case you are not aware, that we have an extensive resource folder online. This resource folder has a lot of information concerning the Paraeducator Certificate Program, and it also contains a in-person curriculum that you can provide if you would like to swipe that. It has clock hour forms, it's got FAQs, it's got a toolkit and recommendations for implementing the program. It's a wealth of information, and we highly recommend checking it out if you have not done so, because it's really good stuff. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and turn it over to our audience to be able to ask any questions that you may have. Alicia will go ahead and read out the question that you have, and then one of us will answer them. Thank you for being here.
Okay, well, thank you all for your questions. We had several people asking about the relationship between the subject matter certificates and the general certificate, and wondering if training for the subject matter certificates can count towards the general certificate.
That's a great question, and in my keeping it broad, I didn't drill down to that. So thank you for asking that, and thank you all for writing it down. Yes, the subject matter certificates, if you complete training on them, on those certificates, they can apply to the general certificate. So this was a decision that the Paraeducator Board made like 3 or 4 years ago. So if I'm a paraeducator and I complete my 20 hours of required training for the special education subject matter certificate, and again, specific learning objectives and standards that must be met in order to meet that special education subject matter certificate, I can apply those 20 hours to the general paraeducator certificate. Likewise with the ELL as well. And actually, Tanya, is there a specific consideration that should be made on ESERT of how this might look like?
So the way that ESERT works is when they put in their professional development, even if they want the clock hours to count towards the subject matter certificates, they have to put the type of study as the appropriate content. So they would enter their type of study as either English language learners content or special education content. And it would not only count towards the general certificate, it would also count towards the subject matter certificate, the appropriate subject matter certificate. And it also, ESERT also tracks the number of clock hours that the paraeducator has entered and applies them towards the application that's available to them. So this is something we go over in our training, but when paraeducators go to apply for their certificate, there's the list of applications available to them. It will show them the number of clock hours that are eligible towards that certificate. So it might say 40 clock hours of the 70 for the general certificate, but then if they've done both of the subject matters, but the subject matters will say 20 of 20 and 20 of 20 for each of the content areas. So it counts them for both. The system has been set up to count for both the subject matters and the general cert.
Great. Thank you so much, Tanya.
Okay, another question that a few people have asked is about the requirement for training paras that get hired in the middle of the year or at the end of the year. Are they still expected to get the 14 hours of training in that year?
Short answer, they are. So again, it's going to be dependent on when you're, or on the size of your school district. But let's say you're a small district and you hire a paraeducator February 1st. You as a small district will have until September 1st to provide 2 days of training on the fundamental course study. If you are a large district, 10,000 or more students, and you hire a paraeducator February 1st, you will have 4 months from the date of hire to provide 2 days of training on the fundamental course study.
Okay, we're getting several questions about the inclusionary practices paraeducator training in iGrant form package 191. People are just wanting some more information about that if we have it.
Thank you, Alicia. So this is an opportunity that OSPI published 2 days ago, I believe. And the way, and my understanding of how this is working is that there's about $375,000 that are available for the state in order to provide training on inclusionary practices for paraeducators. This training can apply for either the fundamental course study or the general paraeducator certificate. Now, from my understanding, I think it might work better for the general paraeducator certificate because then you can do a full 14 hours of training on inclusionary practice if you choose on that. If you were to try to apply it to the fundamental course study, you'll want to make sure that whatever inclusionary training they're looking for does meet the fundamental course study standards of practice and the learning objectives correctly. So you'll have to do a bit of a crosswalk. Also, my understanding is that this funding is limited, so only about 350 or 375,000, and I'm not sure how they're determining who gets the funding if a lot of people request it. So I do recommend reaching out to the contact that I believe that email has and asking for any further questions that you may have. But these are two separate funding sources. Yeah, and I think that would be the best approach. So if you have the opportunity, then I think you could probably get the most out of it if you apply the training towards the general certificate. But please know that you can't double up here. So you can't receive both 14 hours from the state towards the fundamental course study and also 14 hours for these inclusionary practices to do the same training. These are two separate trainings that need to take place.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Another question that's coming up a lot is about the relationship between the Ecertification System and PD Enroller. How are these systems connected, if they are, and if there's a relationship between these two systems?
That is actually a great question because PD Enroller is able to link to an educator's e-certification account. What the educator or paraeducator would need to do is actually go to the PD Enroller website and link their PD Enroller with ESERT. And then what happens is automatic uploads of the clock hours that they've completed and earned.
Tanya, just to check it, make sure you didn't get cut off there.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
The only other thing that I would say is that there on the PD Enroller website is that there are instructions for the paraeducator or educators to follow to make sure those accounts link.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. Another question is about how long or what the timeline is for earning the general certificate, earning all 70 hours. What is the timeline for that? how long do paraeducators have to earn that 70 hours?
A really good question. And one of the reasons why this is a really good question is because there used to be a timeline that as soon as the paraeducator completes the fundamental course study, they will have 3 years to meet the general paraeducator certificate. However, a couple considerations. First, the legislature did not fully fund this training. And when I say fully fund, I mean 4 days of training each year. That was the initial intent. That's how the legislation was written. That was the expectation. But over the last several years, only 2 days of training have been provided for. It's not possible for a district who is following the funding source to be able to provide 10 days of training with 2 days of funding per year within 3 years. So because of that, the Paraeducator Board removed the 3-year requirement. And basically the expectation is now is that a district is required to provide 2 days of training to their paraeducators towards the general certificate each year if they're at that point. And by that, I mean they've completed the fundamental course study, but they have not yet completed the general paraeducator certificate. So each year that funding comes for the program, and if you have a paraeducator that has yet to meet the training, then you will provide them 14 hours of training towards the general paraeducator certificate. As soon as they have met that requirement, you are no longer expected to be providing training to them towards the FCS or the general.
All right, another question is about the cost associated with the general certificate. Do paraeducators need to pay for the general certificate?
So that's an interesting question. Thank you, Alicia. So funding is provided to the district to provide the training. There is no expectation that the 14 hours of required training that a district is providing to their paraeducator is coming out of the paraeducator's pocket. The expectation is that the district is providing this training to their paraeducator. Now, if a district decides to use a partner to provide the training, the district needs to be covering those expenses. Another associated question with here when it comes to expenses is with clock hours. If a paraeducator is expected to pay clock hour fees for the training. Now here it's going to be dependent on how the district functions and also who the provider is that they're working with, if they're working with one. Some will cover clock hour fees, some will not. Some districts cover clock hour fees, some do not. So this is a decision that y'all will have to make moving forward. If a paraeducator decides to do additional training though, so not the 14 hours that a district is covering per year, then yes, then that is on them when it comes to the expenses, any fees, and going out and seeking out the training. But again, the expectation, the requirement is that a district is providing this training to your paraeducators and not that the district is telling their paraeducators to go and seek out training or that they will then, that they have to go figure it out. So I know I've said this already a few times, but it's really to emphasize, just like the fundamental course study, when it comes to the general paraeducator certificate, districts must provide the training to their paraeducators.
Thanks, Jack. Another question, can paraeducators use academic credits like ones that they've gotten through a teacher preparation program or other academic credits towards the general certificate?
If the training, a good question, thank you. If the training took place after July 1st of 2019, that's when the program started, then it can apply towards the general paraeducator certificate. Any training before July 1st of 2019 cannot apply to any part of the program. So that is the one distinction. When it comes to how this gets rectified on ESERT, then I'll pivot to Tanya for that.
Sure. So all educators actually can use credits, college credits, university credits as clock hours. And our system is set up to recognize those and convert the credits from credit 2 clock hours. So a para would go in and put in that they completed a 3/4 credit class. It would actually convert that to 30 clock hours.
Awesome. Thank you, Tanya.
Okay, another question that we have is, sorry, lots of questions coming in. So someone is asking about paraeducators that completed the training, but then moved into another job title or left the district without putting their information into ECert. Is that something that we still would like to be put into ECert, or since the para is no longer in the para position or with the district, does that still need to happen?
So all right, if someone has left the role of paraeducator, then there's no need, I think, to be listing things on ECert, because it really is like more of an opportunity for the paraeducator to be able to track or list completion of the training for the purposes of attaining one of the certificates. If they do, that helps out for us down the road, but you know, I think it's trying to determine how much resources you want to put into trying to track someone down. If there's an anticipation that the paraeducator, either from the paraeducator themselves or from the district, that they will be returning to the role in a future date, then absolutely please put all the information down on ECert. As a foundation for this, it is very important for both the district and the paraeducator to maintain records of training completed towards the fundamental course study and the general paraeducator certificate. This is important for the district to be able to just track where paraeducators are for the requirements of I-grants, and also to receive reimbursement. And then this is important for the paraeducator, because now that paraeducators have been brought into the certification system, the ESERT certification system, but also just the professional development as a whole as an educator in Washington, it is a requirement for paraeducators to maintain records of the training that they're completing and the clock hours that they're completing for their career. So yeah. Thanks, Alicia.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Some people are asking for clarification about the question we asked earlier about paras paying for the general certificate. They're asking if districts are responsible to cover the cost of the certificate, the $74 it costs to order the certificate.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. That has not been raised by the paraeducator board. I do know some districts are covering it, and I know some districts are not. So this is most likely going to be a local decision that needs to be made on whether or not the paraeducator certificate will be covered by the district. The attainment of that certificate will be covered by the district.
We have several people asking about best course of action if trainings are offered to paraeducators and they are not able to attend the trainings at the time that they're offered, or they are just not attending the trainings. And they're asking about maybe some best practices in that case.
Yeah, thanks, Alicia. This is an important question that gets brought up routinely, because it can be tough sometimes. As a district, we're providing all these trainings because it's a requirement on us to be able to provide these trainings, and the paraeducator is not attending. What do we do? First and foremost, if we look at best practices, it's to over communicate. Make sure that paraeducators understand the purpose of these trainings. Make sure that they understand that it is a requirement for these trainings to be completed, and to really showcase what this looks like as a career trajectory of meeting the trainings in order to meet the fundamental course study, the general certificate, and really to professionalize the role as a paraeducator. I know sometimes there might be pushback from someone who could say, I've been in this role for 20 years, I don't need training. But through the pilot that we conducted, and now in the last 2-3 years that we've been doing this training, the number of times that we've heard from paraeducators who've been in the role for 10, 15, 20 years and more, who have shown appreciation for receiving the training because it was the first time they got it, or now they're able to do a different kind of practice with their students, has been quite a bit. So we know that the training is helpful, but the way in order to make sure that your paraeducators know that is to basically over communicate what the expectations are and the purpose for this, and the long-term goals for the training. In addition to that is to really look at your calendar and figure out what is the best approach for providing this training. Are you going to use early release, late starts, early release, conference time? Are you going to book out specific times in your calendar for paraeducator training, or just educator training in a whole, that everyone's going to be receiving X amount of hours on this day towards training, and it's expectation that you attend? That will require some forward thinking of the calendar for the next school year or the school years that follow. It's making sure that you provide ample opportunities, if you're able to, for several trainings to meet the fundamental course study. I know that was it made more sense to do that the first couple of years when there were several paraeducators that had to go through that. But are you able to provide different opportunities for the training to be met? And then it's looking at locally the decisions that you want to make for how, if a paraeducator doesn't meet the requirements, what decisions you would like to make moving forward for addressing that with your paraeducators. And this is a local decision that needs to be made. I will state that it is a requirement that the district make sure that their paraeducators meet the training for the fundamental course study. And then it is a requirement for the paraeducator to meet the general paraeducator certificate. And it's a requirement that the district provides training on the general paraeducator certificate. So those are some best practices for making sure that your paraeducator will attend the training for the fundamental and also the general.
Thanks, Jack. We've had a few people ask how they can get access to the newsletter, the Paraeducator newsletter.
Awesome. If you go to our website, pesb.wa.gov, pesb.wa.gov, and scroll to the bottom, I believe that there's a little banner there that says subscribe to our newsletter. And it's been some time since I've looked at it. Click on that link, and then it should provide you the option to, once you put in your name and email, to subscribe to the Paraeducator Board newsletter, the Professional Educator Standards Board newsletter. These are great communication avenues from us, PESB, to be able to update the field on what is taking place with our agency. And it's also our primary mechanism for providing updates on the Paraeducator Board and the Paraeducator Certificate Program. So everyone here, if you're not on there, I do highly recommend subscribing to that newsletter.
Thanks, Jack. We also have some people asking about paraeducators who also hold a teaching certificate, but they're currently working as a paraeducator. Do they still need to take the FCS? Do they need to get the general certificate? What happens in that case?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Another one that really gets into the weeds, as they say, of the program. So, and thank you for asking. So when it comes to educators who currently hold a valid teaching certificate, the expectation is that they will be required to meet the fundamental course study requirements. A district will have to provide training to them on the fundamental course study. This is written into rule. This was a decision made by the Paraeducator Board because the need is to make sure that everyone is coming everyone is receiving the same training when it comes to the expectations of a paraeducator. So all must receive training, no matter if you have a valid teaching certificate, on the fundamental course study. Now, if after the fundamental course study is complete, if there's a paraeducator with a valid teaching certificate they do not need to complete the general paraeducator certificate. They are still required to attain the certificate though. So they are not required to have to go through the trainings, but they are required to go on ESERT and attain that certificate. Similarly, if a paraeducator has a special education endorsement or an ELL endorsement, they can go online to ESERT and attain the certificates without completing the training. So that's how that works for paraeducators holding a valid teaching certificate.
Thanks, Jack. We've had a few people ask if there are instructions anywhere for how to use ESERT, how to upload documents into ESERT, if there's anywhere they can get instructions on that.
So we do actually have a paraeducator user guide available on our website that paraeducators can use to navigate the system. We also have a couple of pages specific to paraeducators, web pages specific to paras and the requirements for certification, how to create an account in the EDS system and e-certification, and those types of things. So those are definitely available on our website. The one thing that I want to make sure that you all really understand is that there's only one chance that paras get to upload their documentation, and it's when they're submitting an application. There's a step within the application for certification that actually allows them to attach PDF documentation, and that would give them the opportunity to upload it there directly to their account. Because this is such a new program for paraeducators and they're not familiar with keeping their clock hour documentation, we have been informing them that it's okay to email us that information to our CERT email account, and we will add it to their file for them if they've created their e-certification account. So they can definitely email it to us, we'll add it to their file, or they can hang on to it and upload it as part of an application.
Thanks, Tanya. Alicia, I think we have room for one more question.
Okay, hopefully this one can be kind of quick. We have some questions about paraeducators who come to a district already having done the FCS and completed the general certificate. In that case, do districts still need to provide them with 2 days of training?
That is a quick question. Thank you. No, if a paraeducator has completed the fundamental course study and the general paraeducator certificate, then you district are not required to provide training to them. The only requirement for this program is that a district must provide training on the fundamental course study and the general certificate if a paraeducator has yet to complete it. So you are not required to provide training to them. And with that, I think we'll come to a close to this webinar. So please do access the slides. If you would like to dig deeper into any of the information, please do email us at paraboard@k12.wa.us. And if you would like to connect with us in any other way, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Medium, YouTube, and of course, our primary website, pesb.wa.gov. And with that, I thank you very much for being here today. Thank you to my partners here, Alicia and Tanya, very much appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask us. Thank you all and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.